My name is Chris Woods. I live here in Chilliwack, BC. I have been a painter for approximately 25 years, a full-time professional painter. I attended classes at UFE, which was at the time Fraser Valley College, in 1988 to 1990. I didn't graduate, unfortunately, but I try to wear that as a badge of honor rather than as a badge of failure. So I was very lucky at UFE to have some pretty great instructors that pushed me into the areas I needed to go, particularly Rory Wallace, who taught in the art history wing, and a couple of my studio teachers were good. I didn't get along with a couple of my other ones, and that, I think, was good in a way. It sort of taught me what I liked and what I didn't like, and what I agreed with and what I didn't agree with, philosophically anyway, which was, I didn't agree with a more traditional mindset, which is what some of the teachers had. So I think that kind of urged me to create my own work. And painting is, I figured if I could master drawing and painting when I started out, then I'd be able to go on to do anything else I wanted as an artist. But I liked drawing and painting so much, that's just what I stuck with. So that's what I'm still doing today.
Tell me a secret.
So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about what your current work is. I've seen your Sandstorm and some of your older work, but I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about what you're working on now.
Wow. After finishing the Sandstorm series, which was inspired by the original Star Wars trilogy, I'm still kind of hammering out what's next. Just because of the economy and the way things have shaken out, I've taken on a few commissions at the moment to kind of pay some bills and bridge the gaps. So I'm sort of in the exploratory phase of what's next. I think, well, I'm positive that the themes that I will tackle next will deal with patriarchy and man playing God. I'm a big fan of Herman Melville's novel Moby Dick, and there's a passage in there where he says, no great and noble book has ever been written on the flea, although many have tried it. And so I tried to take that advice. He basically says, pick a big topic because you'll expand to its bulk. And so I thought, what's a big topic after Star Wars? That was something that meant a lot to me as a kid and as a formative person. So now that I've kind of looked at my past, what's my future? What's everybody's future? And I think it's the biggest topic I could think of was, God or the powers that be. And it's sort of actually, in thinking about that theme, it sort of morphed into humans playing God. So the idea for the show right now is to do a series of paintings, about 8 paintings that will use characters from, I'm going back to the pop culture again, characters from the movie Blade Runner, Star Trek II Wrath of Khan, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and possibly Star Wars again. But I may switch that out for something else at the moment. But all of those movies have characters that play God in a real sense. The Star Trek 2 has, you've got your typical Kirk and Khan, who sort of are gods fighting against each other, but you also have Kirk's, his ex-girlfriend and the mother of his son, David Marcus. Carol Marcus has designed and built a device that terraforms planets instantly, the Genesis device, and it's also consequently can be used as a horrible weapon. So that's sort of one of the jumping off points for me for this series, is playing God with the best of intentions. Sometimes can go wrong. Blade Runner is also the same in that you have the character of Dr. Terrell, who's literally making humans. He literally is God to a sector of this community in this future society, which is coming up pretty fast on the calendar. and then same with Terminator 2, you've got characters who are, you know, trying to go in and alter the past, and man's playing God in that film and ends up sort of being his own worst enemy because he invents a computer system that becomes sentient and takes over. So, I mean, it's all really pretty serious nerd stuff, but I'm going to try to take a real painterly look at it and almost look at it as historical painting. But another plan is that I'd like to do them very large scale. The Sandstorm show I had at the Reach Gallery Museum in Abbotsford in 2014, they had a really big, beautiful banner for the show. I can give you a picture of that. And it reminded me how much I like scale in image making. So I might, this series, which tentatively is titled Wild Boys, which is named after the Duran Duran song, of course, will be large banners. So 10 by 20 feet or by 8 by 16 feet. So I figure scale is one way to really, for me, is something I've always wanted to tackle, and I think will be something that's going to make a big, it's something I wanted to just do for a long time and never really had the wherewithal, and I've just decided I'm just going to jump in and try that.
Okay. Sounds really good. It sounds very interesting. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I don't know how Gallery Jones, my agents, feel about it, but I'm very excited about the idea, that's for sure. So.
And that's important when you're making art, I guess.
Yeah, I'm doing something also that I don't normally do, which is trying to come up with competing ideas. Like normally I'll have a theme for a show, like the patriarchy or playing God, and I'll just run with that. But I'm trying to run alternate scenarios of, you know, well, if you weren't going to do this, what might you do? So I'm trying to mix up my creative process that way, and you know, maybe there's a better idea out there. Maybe there really is a concept that would be stronger and, you know, maybe more commercial, or just something that I haven't even thought of yet, or even something I can use for the next series. So I'm really trying to, you know, plan far ahead. I'm in my 40s now. I'm 44 years old, and you know, you're running out of time pretty fast to do all your big, bring all your big ambitions to life. So that I'm really digging deep. I've got the shovel out, and I'm really digging around in my brain to see what's coming next.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about how you got started as an artist. So like, how did you realize that art was for you? It was your path that you wanted to take?
I think I knew I wanted to be an artist almost immediately. You know, I was always the kid in grade school that could draw, so anybody, you know, you wanted a picture drawn, you'd go and ask Chris to do it. And my parents were incredibly supportive. I have to say that without them, I mean, there's no me without my parents, certainly. And later, my in-laws, my wife's parents, have all been hugely supportive financially and morally, and, you know, they've sort of laid the road out for me and given me the freedom to pursue my endeavors. So I really have them to thank first for recognizing that drive in me, because you know, when you're an arrogant teen, you realize you have a skill, there's no question in your mind that that's what you're going to go ahead with. So I just, like, once again, it's not knowing how hard it is, you know. So I just jumped right in and I was very lucky, considering that I couldn't really afford to go to a larger city to attend school. Like Emily Carr, if I'd had the means or the wherewithal or the gumption, I probably should have gone there. But however, it worked out. You know, I had 2 excellent years at Chilliwack Senior Secondary, because they had and still have a very evolved fine arts program, I would say college level. So I graduated from there sort of already ahead of the curve and with their blessing, so to speak, and went to college and kind of finished off the 2 years there. Like I say, I didn't graduate, but I kind of see that as my 4 years of university, sort of technically qualifies as a BFA, although there's, you know, missing a few puzzle pieces on that. and then frankly, I just got lucky. You know, I had the family to support me. I really liked to do the art. Figurative work was what really attracted me, and I was lucky enough. My art history teacher, Rory Wallace, gave me a call for submissions for Artropolis 90, which was one of the big Salon de Refuse that was held by the art community in Vancouver in the 80s and 90s. The original October show, I think it was at about 82 or 83, and it was in response to a big show at the Vancouver Art Gallery. The arts community felt that the Vancouver Art Gallery wasn't representing the true geography, you know, the true art scene in Vancouver. So they held their own show, which is in a really great tradition of artist-run events. So I was lucky to get in at the kind of the not the tail end, but you know, the stump of the tail on that, and was very lucky to get gallery representation from that show. So yeah, it was. I'd like to say it was lots of diligent hard work, but it was a moderate amount of hard work and a whole bunch of luck piled on top of it. So.
So I also wanted to ask you, what is your process like? So where do you get your inspiration from? How do you sort of gather it, and then before you start a piece?
Looking for inspiration, it's hard. It's something I just basically have to keep the net open 24/7, if that makes any sense. You know, as an artist, your job is to be an observer, so you've got to pay attention. You got to pay attention to life, you know, whatever it is you're doing. Inspiration could come from anywhere. I mean, initially it was from my friends, you know, hanging around with my pals, and as well as using photography, and things would just sort of naturally happen. And then when you photograph your friends, they tend to do what they want to do, and so that's interesting, so I'll put that in. You know, when you're 20-something, you hang out at McDonald's and, you know, do 20-something stuff, you go to the mall. Now that I'm in middle age, and, you know, I have a son and a family, and I don't get to see the friends that much, I look to pop culture itself. You know, I just sort of go right to the source of whether it's movies or TV or cartoons and comic books and the internet, of course. So, you know, I try to be honest and draw from things that are from my life. You know, I don't try to, although the next series may be a little loftier in its goals. I try to, whatever's in my environment, so to speak, or whatever seems to have deep meaning over time. You know, these dumb science fiction movies from my youth really have cast a long shadow over my philosophy in life. Not only because they're entertainment and they were fun to watch, but I also, you know, as an adult, going back to look at a movie like Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan, and listening to the director Nicholas Meyer talk about how he was inspired by Dickens' Tale of Two Cities and Moby Dick as well, and then reading those books and then going back and watching the movie to see the literary themes that are, you know, in a Star Trek movie, like what? That's not supposed to make sense. But it always interests me to see pop culture that's reach extends its grasp, if that makes any sense. You know, Star Trek 2 is a really beautiful operatic, you know, an arc of an incredible story. You know, you've got, and also a brilliant idea, which is this terraforming torpedo called the Genesis device. You know, you're pulling on biblical references with that. You know, literally recreating the Earth, and there's a lot of really big philosophical themes in that, and also Terminator 2. You know, the time travel, and I watched a couple of really great videos. A young lady in a philosophy major in London in the UK has done her thesis on Terminator 2, Judgment Day, and all the Jungian sort of underlying themes, as well as other metaphysical elements that this stupid movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger imbues. And I've been shown the value of my love of those movies by they've trickled up to our, they've stayed with our pop culture despite pop culture's nature to regrind and recycle. You don't really, I don't think nobody would want to do a series of paintings on New Kids on the Block or something, or the Spice Girls or something that's kind of disposable. But these, those grand themes that Joseph Campbell was talking about, where George Lucas got all his stuff for the Star Wars films, the hero's journey and all that junk. It endures, and those things inspire me. And I don't think it's wrong to look at modern sources of those things and reinterpret them a little bit. So it's the grand themes that, something that I can go to my DVD player and draw inspiration from is certainly the best program for me, because I don't have to leave the house. But it's also sometimes those little things that are kind of the white noise in your life have a lot to say.
How do you decide or know when one of your pieces is finished?
That's usually not as hard a test as you'd think. It's certainly in the way I work. Maybe it should be a problem, frankly, for me in the future. I tend to be pretty methodical, and I plan things out quite thoroughly. So if anything, I get bored with the actual process. The creation, the conception of the ideas are the most exciting, because you can see things starting to form. When a painting is finished, it's pretty much finished. I could tell you the minute that I did the last brush stroke, and this needs a few more things here and there. So it's the agonizing usually goes into the before part. Like, it's nice to make a decision when you're finished, at the very least. I mean, I'm not sure if it was Picasso who said, like, paintings aren't finished, they're just abandoned. And as methodical as I try to be in my approach, that's still pretty accurate, I think. Where you're just like, well, that's what it looks like. There's not much else I can do from here, So it's whatever I didn't do in this, will be done in the next one. So it's all, it's alchemy. I wish I could say painting and making art was a science that you could. I've unfortunately, to my detriment, tried to make it a science by focusing on geometry or perspective or rendering and the effects of light. And I think I've painted some of the spontaneity out of some of my early mid-career works have been a little too clinical. So I'm trying to be more painterly. That's what the Sandstorm series was about. Getting rid of the masking tape and the ruler and the measuring tape and the, no vanishing points. Just don't worry about the technical details. Just let the bigger picture come together. And it's a tough crutch to let go of, certainly. And so I always say painting is kind of like walking on a tightrope. And I've been doing it with with a net all this time, because if I fell, I had stuff to fall back on. Well, at least if it's a boring painting, at least the perspective is correct and the geometry is right, and that's a secondary ambition. That's really big thing for me about seeing art that moves me. Somebody like John Singer Sargent, this 19th century portraitist and muralist. I think he had those skills nailed, and he was able to move past. He was able to use all his skills and knowledge in drafting and geometry to really to take to the air, if that makes any sense. Like, I feel as an artist like I've been driving a 747. I've been driving it on the ground everywhere, if that makes any sense. Like, I had all this power and all these great tools, but I never really used them, So there's wings on that 747, so if I just pull back on the yoke, I can take to the air and worry about I have the skills polished enough to hope that I don't need to worry about, oh, that angle's a little weird, or that, that roof doesn't look right, so, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right. So it's, if anything, I need to get more noise back into the signal, if that makes sense. Like, I've always pursued in my earlier works a very lucid style. The ambition is to be dreamlike in the photorealistic qualities. It's not to be illustrative, but it is to be, to put you in a dream, in a place that you weren't necessarily going to visit, but in the shamanistic kind of vision sense, I guess. But that medium is not a great message. It tends to, people still see photorealism as provincial and kind of backward and OCD. So, and I think that too. And it takes a long time to do paintings like that. So if I paint in a more expressionistic manner, then I'm better off, and I'm certainly better off for trying new things, because that's what, if you just stick to the same old tricks, then you're really sunk, whether it sells or not. If you've got it's the artist's imperative to evolve. So.
Keep our love apart.
What advice would you give to aspiring artists that are students at UFV right now?
Advice for advice for aspiring artists, that's tough, because I'm still figuring this stuff out myself. I can say for sure, it's all those boring grown-up things, cultivate a really good work ethic and eat your vegetables, and it's that boring stuff, but it really does matter. And you have to be, the biggest thing that I've learned now in middle age is you have to be a creative island unto yourself. You can't expect the world to continue to beat a path to your door. I've been lucky with a moderate amount of recognition, and that, as with most things, has tapered off a little bit, but I haven't seen that as my failure. I had a patron, a very nice gentleman who's recently passed away, said to me all the time that you don't praise the apple tree for making apples. And what he meant by that was that I am an artist and I just make art, and whether there's people there to pick up the apples or not, you're still going to make the apples. Like, you really, the way I see it is, if every painting I did went right out of the studio and into a wood chipper, it would still be worth it, because it's up here where you did the real work. It's the getting the works done. I think the one thread through my career as an artist was just that, that climbing Mount Everest sense, because it's there. Like, you have to flip that around and say, I want to paint because I want to make it there, if that makes any sense. It's about challenging yourself, and it took me a long time to figure that out, that's really why I'm here, because you spend time being angry because, I didn't get it mentioned in the paper, or I'm not rich and famous. And, well, hey dummy, you chose the artist's life, you chose a path that has advantages and disadvantages, but it's like, and that seems like a lot to dump on a student, certainly, but do it for the work. That's the only reason you're there. Do it for the work, because that's your redemption. If you stay true to that, you can't help but be a success regardless. You have to, everybody in life, no matter what they do, has to cultivate a philosophical view on life. And for artists, that's kind of their job. You're a philosopher, a plastic philosopher. You're making things, you're making representations of your philosophy. So you kind of have to be that shaggy hermit in the desert sometimes, that you've got to realize that path will be a part of your career at some time where you may have to shoulder the load on your own and go it alone. I've been lucky in the family regard with that stuff. And so that's helped me cultivate, when it's the 30th day in the studio in a row that I've been working and it's 8 hours and I really would just like to play with my son, that marathon spirit it's its own reward. I've gained an immense amount of satisfaction from just getting a series done or getting a painting done and knowing that you did it. That's, if your core is solid in that way, if you don't doubt yourself or your abilities, you've got the whole world in your hand. I remember seeing an interview with the artist, you forgive me now because I forget his name, I'll tell you in a second. Baltus is his name. He was kind of a late expressionist. I remember seeing an interview of him when he was 90, living in the Swiss Alps and had a young, like a 20-year-old wife, and but he clearly, had not been trendy for 50 years. But he just said that when he held the brush in his hand, he held the whole world in his hand. That's how he felt. So that I couldn't think of a better description for myself, certainly. So that it's that dumb old thing: be true to yourself and never doubt your abilities or your vision. You have to work on cultivating a vision, and then you have to be faithful to that vision. So, but it's not about becoming a shut-in. Also, it's about just that extra 5-10%. If you work that much harder, you get a lot more out at the other end. I find, like, I don't have to apply myself terribly hard to get more results, if that makes any sense. So I don't want to discourage students by saying it's a lot of work, because you don't do it all at once. Of course, you do it over time and you plan, and it's like anything else. It's about diligence and your willingness to take hits along the way. It's not going to be perfect, but it's not. Again, that's the artist's job, is to endure through those things and to continue to bring their vision forth. So just get ready for a lot of work, but if you're conditioned, you work out the right muscles, then you can do it. It's not simple. The task is not simple, but the philosophy is on paper.